The following is a Cheeky Leprechaun production.
Pop culture is the entirety of ideas.
Me, Mario.
Let the bass kick.
I am the greatest.
Holy eggshell!
I am your father.
This is the Pop Culture Report with Dan O'Kelly.
It is the Pop Culture Report. Welcome back to the fourth installment of the Pop Culture Report, and happy Avengers Week. I mean, anyone listening to this podcast would be fully aware that at the time that this is dropping, which is Tuesday, what date is that? The 23rd of April. It means that tomorrow, the 24th of April, Avengers Endgame is dropping in theaters. At least all around Australia. I believe it's worldwide. Should be, because I tell you what, Spoiler City is going to be happening on the internet. I, for one, will be avoiding the internet until I've seen it. I think though, I'm booked in pretty early. I'm booked in at about 11 a.m. to see Avengers, and super, super excited. It's one of the most anticipated climaxes to a film franchise I can remember. I mean, The Dark Knight was certainly up there. And that's sort of, I don't know, it depends who you talk to as to how you feel that one paid off in the end. I liked it, but with Avengers, after Infinity War, like, everyone was going nuts. Everyone's like, what the hell? They're like fading away. And spoilers, a lot of the superheroes turn to dust and blow away in the breeze after Big Thanos just... yeah. If you've seen it, you know what I mean. But anyway, we're all curious to see what's going to happen in Avengers and how they're going to bring it back. So with so much anticipation around the last installment of this phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and you know all the success it's had and the great critical praise, and it's sort of fitting to spend today's episode talking about another comic book universe that sort of wasn't quite as successful. We're talking about the DCEU. DC Comics Extended Cinematic Universe thing, whatever they wanted to call it. The DCEU, which is DC Extended Universe. Wasn't that hard to work out. We're talking about that and sort of how... Look, DC knew... Look at what Marvel's doing. Isn't that fantastic? Look at everyone loving it. Look at all the money. This is great. Look at all the toys being used in these movies. We could do that. And they tried. And depending who you talk to, they had varying levels of success. I, for one, I mean, it lessens with each passing year, I guess. But I, for one, for a long time was, just battling hard, defending things like Batman v Superman and Man of Steel. I still stand by Man of Steel. That's an entertaining movie. But depending who you talk to, they might not agree. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be looking at Batman v Superman, Man of Steel, Suicide Squad a little bit, and Justice League. They're sort of the main films we'll look at because what DC Comics did, and Warner Brothers Studio, they hired Zack Snyder as sort of their Kevin Feige, who is the man behind Marvel Cinematic Universe, the mastermind that's created this whole world and done really well with it. They're like, hey, let's get Zack Snyder. He can do that for us, and it'll be like really great, and that'll be like our, comparison. And Zack cops a lot of the brunt of the feedback and complaints about the DCEU. So we're mainly looking at those films because those keeping up with DC know that they're starting to turn it around. Like they're sort of now Zack's out of the picture. They're sort of getting on top of it. So we're going to look at those first stepping stones into the DCEU and what went wrong with them, why they maybe didn't work. And the people I've decided to join me to talk about it are the two people who I debate it with the most in my everyday life. Two people that we really probably shouldn't be friends anymore with the things that have been said in relation to this DCEU in attempts to defend our own positions and opinions. It's been a trying time for our friendship from, let's say, 2013 through now. But we're getting there, and you'll hear us rehash old arguments, and still, some of us refuse to fall on our sword. Before we go any further, though, we do need to mention our sponsor. You know them by now, Bell Design Co. Bell Design Co. is a graphic design label who are the ones to thank for our show's logo. Whether you're a small startup or big business, a passion project, or a little old podcaster like me, you need all the help you can get in reaching and expanding your audience for your product. Having professional design logos and branding for whatever it is you're doing is key to making your product as eye-catching as possible in the crowded world that is social media. So instead of going to a large agency where your project will probably be pushed from desk to desk, head over to Bell Design Co, where you'll interact directly with Beck and Estelle through the creation of your logo and branding needs. If you get in contact with them, use the promo code PopCultureReport to let them know Dan sent you for a 10% off discount. And they'll give it to you too. Yeah, great. 10% off. Why wouldn't you? Get in contact with them at their Facebook page, Bell Designs, Instagram @BellDesignCo, or email all inquiries to estelle.battaglia1@gmail.com. That's Estelle, ESTELLE .Battaglia, BATTAGLIA1@gmail.com. All right, let's shuffle on into this week's conversation because it was a doozy. I had to really trim it back because when you get people talking about the shit they care about, it just goes on and on and on. And I fired us all up from the get-go. I sort of antagonized, I poked, I prodded, and it inevitably fired everyone up. Dane, really negative on the DCEU. He hates it. Heath tries his hardest to get him into it and believe, it's as good as what he wanted it to be. And I'm an easy please a lot of the time. I love Batman. I love Superman. I love all the DC characters. So I don't know. I think I maybe I wanted to love it more than maybe I really should have honestly believed I did. But you'll be able to determine that for yourself once you listen to this conversation. As I said, joined by two of my mates, Dane and Heath, who are very passionate on this topic. If you're a fan of the DCEU, hopefully some of us do you proud as in our defense of it. If you hate it, I'm sure you'll really like this episode. Regardless, something for everyone. Let's go now to my conversation with Dane and Heath as we chat all things the DCEU and what the hell went wrong. Podcast, very conversational.
No, I feel like that's really rude to do that.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Sorry.
But I've picked the two people that make me come into this very concerned. Because when we discuss today's topic, the DC Cinematic Universe, it usually ends with Dane, who I've got here. Say hello, Dane.
G'day, guys. How you doing?
You usually crack the shits first.
I'm rolling up my sleeves right now in preparation.
Yeah, you're not happy
to
already.
Get into a fight.
Yeah.
I'm ready for this to go.
Well, that's my concern. You're the one that gets worked up the most because you come at this largely from a bit of a film wanker sort of perspective. You're a film guy.
I like to say a professional.
Professional?
Professional.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah, industry profesh.
Well, I mean, and you're not a massive comic guy.
Well, I think that's why my opinion, although...
Doesn't matter?
No, I was going to say is inherently correct all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why? Why do the objections come from that?
Well, because I'm not a comic book fan. So you guys tear me down, and I'd like to think that Snyder's world that he's created is for comic book fans.
Okay. So that's what you choose to believe that just to make yourself sleep better at night? That sounds like...
No, I don't.
You know what? It's a comic book thing. That's why I don't get it. It's a comic book thing.
I mean, I don't know if we're going to go into it later, but all one has to do is look at the Rotten Tomatoes scores.
Oh, we're going to go into
the critics.
Yep.
And I
that
generally side with the critic because, well...
You're a snob. Yeah. You're a snob. But that's why you're here, because you're going to give good aggression. I can feel it early.
And a snob's perspective,
and
which is what we need.
Perspective. And that is the voice of Heath Schmidt, who is also with us. Now, Heath, you're here because to be honest, I like how you're sometimes on my side.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes, not all the time. You yourself can get a little snobby. I think it's safe to say here, I'm the fanboy a little bit. I convince myself I like a lot of things, regardless of how good it might be. Whereas you two are able to be a little bit more critical. Whereas I go in wanting to love something and I will come out the other end doing my darnest to make sure I love it.
Which is definitely not the case for me. I normally come out saying I hated that.
Yeah,
I think you're easily pleased.
Okay. Well, why? Why do you think that? What makes you say that? What basis would you... Is it just for these films or in general, do
I
you
think
think?
in general.
In general?
You come out and you're generally pretty stoked with whatever you've seen and you don't take it to heart, whereas
Yeah.
I get heavily involved,
Okay.
emotional, and that's where the aggression comes from. Heath is also a little bit...
I'm about like the halfway point, I would say.
You two do get
this
offended
the
by films, don't you?
Is this the perfect threesome?
Wow.
I was thinking more
We'll
like
see- we'll see in about an hour or so.
Goldilocks and the Three Bears, like me being in the middle, just right. But
Just... I don't know about that, but I do agree with you in that it's very much... There's a dynamic here that hopefully will please anyone listening. They'll either be able to side with one of us or at least none of us. And if they don't side with any of us, then hopefully there's more of you out there that can all band together. Because essentially at this point in time, we've just found out the DCEU, DC Extended Cinematic Universe, what is it? Yeah,
Extended
something.
was a joke anyway.
Yeah, that is no longer, at least the way we know it. So a Warner Brothers executive has come out this week and said, yeah, look, it's done. Forget what you knew about, your Snyderverse, which it was commonly known as amongst the fanboys out there. Forget about your Henry Cavills as Superman. Forget about your Ben Affleck. Rip Ben Affleck, by the way. We will get right into that. Other things will stay intact, such as Aquaman, who was introduced in Batman v Superman. Same with, I don't know. They haven't really touched on Flash. I don't know what's going to happen.
Flash is currently undergoing rewrites. I
Really?
did a little bit of research.
Well, actually, yeah, no, I do think I did see that. Did you read anything on it, or did you see the
I
headline?
read they're changing producers.
Did you just see the headlines?
Yeah, because I just
me.
I just saw the headline and I thought, it's another rewrite. Great. Okay.
I knew if I brought this to the table that somebody would pull me up, so I did do a bit of a read.
Yeah, good.
So they've changed producers, or they're looking for a new producer. They're currently undergoing rewrites, but this has been happening for a few years.
Same
And-
directors still?
No, still searching for a director.
And have they recast anyone?
No, well, what's his name?
Ezra?
Ezra's still playing.
Ezra Miller.
He was in an interview this week promoting another film.
Yeah.
And this is where this all came out. And he said the Flash film is going to create a whole bunch of multiverses.
Oh, that
So
might be Flashpoint.
It might be
okay.
Flashpoint. Yeah.
And
That's one way of saving it.
Well, yeah.
Well, that's exactly what the headline said.
Right.
That's
There
one
we go.
way of
I
rebooting
actually
this
read the
whole thing.
article.
Well, because that's what they did on the X-Men series.
Yeah, that's true.
When it fell to shit, they just went, well, let's just rechange this
All
and
right.
rebrand the whole thing.
Okay.
And I think it's a good move.
We can't really help ourselves here. Before we get into the nitty gritty of what happened to the DCEU, let's talk about what could happen. So we're talking Flashpoint potentially over here. You said that's one way it can save it. Why do you think that's Heath? Why do you think that? Because you're a big advocate, as am I, of the comic Flashpoint. And there are elements of it that could lend into this quite nicely.
Well, it's similar to X-Men, like you just said, Dane. So they had the original series going with like not Ben Affleck, the other who's
In
the
the
Australian
X-Men,
guy?
Hugh
Yep.
Jackman.
Hugh Jackman.
Yep.
I don't know why I thought Affleck. Hugh Jackman.
Affleck on the brain.
And Halle Berry and the chick with a really weird name who played Jean. They were all getting much older, and it was getting to a point where they wanted to continue that series.
Is that why all this happened with all the time jumping?
Yeah, so then they had X-Men First Class, which introduced a much younger cast.
Okay.
And
And
the
what was that?
characters-
Was that X-Men 3?
No, X-Men 3 had Jean Grey essentially kill everyone, including the Professor,
Okay.
which was, it
Oh.
kind of ended that trilogy,
Yeah.
and they kind of shot themselves in the foot because they were like, oh, now we can't really make any more films.
Yeah.
So they did a prequel.
It was basically a reboot
Yeah.
by changing dimensions.
Okay. And
Yeah.
the reboot, was that Days of Future Past?
Yes, that's when
Yes.
it brought the old films, the Hugh Jackman,
Yep.
together with the new ones with Jennifer Lawrence.
Okay.
And so that was a way of doing it, and it worked because it felt kind of natural for that would happen in the comic books. Like that is two timelines coming together and kind of birthing out a new one, which has happened all the time with comic books. I mean, it just happened with DC. They just had Rebirth.
Yeah.
So-
After New 52, which it's all...
Which,
they,
funnily enough, like DCEU, I really liked New 52. A lot of people didn't.
I loved it.
And then they thought, okay, to please everyone, we'll reboot it.
But isn't the whole comic book world? Well, I don't think
You've
I've
never
read
delved
maybe,
in it?
Yeah.
a handful.
Yeah.
Isn't that the thing that there's one main, timeline, and then there's
All these
complete
other-
different interpretations and different.
Well, it's a
authors and different-
multiverse,
Yeah, so there's numerous different worlds.
which is a way for them to be able to tell different stories without it directly impacting on the main timelines, I guess. Which I mean, you start wondering, is that what they're trying to attempt now with having a Joker film with Joaquin Phoenix, which is not Jared Leto, who was already established as the Joker in this DCEU, even though obviously that Suicide Squad is now being rebooted. The whole thing is, well, now we're more standalone. And it could lead into that Flashpoint we're talking about by doing all these standalone films. All of a sudden they do Flashpoint and you find out this is all within a multiverse. I don't know. It's all speculation, but...
I feel that almost they're just going standalone. This is a personal opinion based off no fact at all.
You're pretty informed, though. I don't know. You've got that intel.
But I honestly think that they've just gone, scratch it.
Yeah.
They were trying to rival Marvel in their universe. 11 years, 22 films, all intertwined, but there's one coherent storyline, which is based around Thanos being the mega villain.
Yep.
And that's what I think they were trying to do. And they were already, 6 years behind the MCU. Mm-hmm. So they went...
They were playing catch-up.
How can we do this? And let's just put the two biggest stars, because they are Superman and Batman, the biggest comic book stars known to, your common man.
Whether it's Marvel or DC, they are the two.
Yeah, if you ask a random person on the street
yeah.
name a superhero, it's going to be either Batman or Superman.
And before the MCU, no one would have had a fucking clue who Iron Man was.
I literally just said that today. Now.
Yeah, you wouldn't. You who's Iron Man? I don't know. Action
Thor?
hero or who's Thor? No one had a clue who Thor was, but everyone always knew who.
But
Batman
even
and
smaller
Superman
heroes now, like Black Widow, Ant-Man,
are all relevant because of
people
those
know them
films.
and they're big stars. Whereas a few years ago, not even on the map.
And which sort of seems like that's the hand that DC's been forced to play now. Is all right. Well, we've sort of shot our big heroes in the foot for the main part anyway, Batman and Superman. Maybe we go the second Marvel approach, which is let's lean on the lesser known characters, lower expectations going into a movie, and see if we can maybe nail them a little bit. Because, I mean, who didn't love Aquaman, hey? I loved Aquaman. What a Dane, did you love Aquaman?
It was dog shit.
It was a movie, wasn't it?
It was a movie,
It was a coherent movie.
So was The Room.
Come on, me and Heath loved it. We went and fangirled that movie.
When it ended, the credits started rolling. Daniel and I looked at each other and we both said, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I looked at Heath
with this.
and I had a genuine moment of, oh my God, I don't want him to crush me and say he hated it because I really liked it. And then he said it and I've never been that elated.
There's nothing worse than sitting next to a bloke and they maybe look like scuffling around and being a
Yeah.
bit agitated throughout the movie.
They seem uninterested.
They hate it. And then you turn to them and be like, so did you hate it as much as I think? They're like, I loved it. And then you can hug and
I
just
know.
like celebrate.
It was us in La La Land. We did that in La La Land.
I just
Way
found
off topic. All right. You know what? Let's dive into it. So, overview of what we're going to be covering is we've got to be specific because what I figured is the main person with the blame for the whole mishap of the DCEU is Zack Snyder. He was the one.
Would we blame him?
Well, I don't want to blame him, but he was the one tasked with creating the vision. At least that's what they say. He always said it. He was the mastermind behind creating this universe. He did a lot of the casting choices, which and also Justice League was shot in the foot, and that wasn't his movie at all.
No, it wasn't.
But you could say that Man of Steel, which I loved, I still stand by Man of Steel, and Batman v Superman, which we'll get into later, were definitely his movies. I think, at least for the most part, he never cracked it about anything. Well, I mean, we'll get into the director cut, whatever. But so what we're going to mainly cover is Man of Steel being the start of this DC universe, going into Batman v Superman. We'll touch on things like Suicide Squad and Wonder Woman, but then we'll largely finish with Justice League and what could have been.
Beyond.
And what could have been. But those main three being Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Justice League being Snyder's actual films he directed. And again, the trickle-on effect that it had on those other little movies in there. We'll touch on Wonder Woman because I think there's a few different opinions in this room. But
Speaking of Beyond, this is just a total sidebar. Would love a Batman Beyond film.
Do it. Did you hear Kevin Smith talking about it?
No, really?
You know what he was saying? Oh, you've got to listen to his podcast. Another podcast. It's way better than this one. Go listen to it.
Whoa. Well, this is just started, mate. This has got legs.
Just throwing this out there, Kevin Smith threw out that imagine casting Michael Keaton as Old Man Batman. And
wow.
Can you imagine? He's like, why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah, but what
He
universe
actually-
is it in?
Well, that's the thing. No one knows anymore. So you could do it. It's in the Joker universe. That's what it's in. Just a standalone. All right. So overview of these movies. We're just going to touch on Rotten Tomatoes scores because that seems to be the only one people care about. I don't like Rotten Tomatoes, but it seems to be the one that everyone goes to for an informed opinion. I don't know why. So Man of Steel, scored a 56% on Rotten Tomatoes. So that is it's like, what's the middle tomato? It's not a splat, but it's not a ripe.
It's not quite right.
It's in the middle there at some point. I don't know what it's called. And a 75% audience score. So that's worth noting.
So the tomato is the critic score.
Tomato is
So
critic.
that's where I would fall.
Yes, so
Okay,
you
good.
gave that. I mean, by default, it's 56. All right, that's how this works.
Very good.
I think my IMDb rating for it, because I do rate films on
Yeah, I
IMDb,
do.
it's probably a 9, I think.
Did you? Okay, let's go around the table quickly.
Hold on, almost
Did
just
you-
fell off me high chair.
What do you think, Dane, about Man of Steel?
Man of Steel,
Dane has seen it only once.
I've seen it once.
So I don't
That's
know
all I
if he's
needed.
Did you see it when it
formed an
came
opinion.
out?
I don't believe so. I think I saw it a couple of years. Actually, I'm not entirely sure because I know it was fully endorsed by my good friend, Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, okay.
'Cause he was a
Yeah,
producer.
Close friend. Close. That's why you're on the show, in fact.
Correct. Because he was a producer on it. So I was heavily intrigued because
were.
the only reason I'm a comic book fan is because of the Dark Knight series.
Let's be honest, that'll probably be covered on a future episode. Yep.
And his vision was genius, grounded in a dense reality of what could
Look,
happen.
he finds a way to get Dark Knight trilogy in
got
there,
his
doesn't he?
trilogy
He
cards
comes in, he
here,
goes,
Ricky.
I'm not going to talk about
I'm
DCEU.
gonna
Screw
push
that.
my ulterior motive. But he was on board as a producer to produce that. So
Yep.
I thought it was going to be in kind of the same realm.
Like, you could argue it was. It was grounded in reality to an extent. I mean, people's biggest thing and your biggest thing was the destruction scene at the end of Man of Steel.
That was everyone's big gripe.
You could argue that's grounded in reality. It's probably what would happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's
but I
not
mean,
going to be one building that gets knocked over.
No.
It's probably going to be quite a big
look at
number
him.
of blocks.
Look at Dane. He's about
It
to
is, but
burst
I
at the
think the
seam.
thing that I've found, upon reflection, upon maturing and really analysing, like we've had some good discussions.
Yeah.
Upon analysing this series and The Dark Knight, the fact is that The Dark Knight, he's a superhero, but he's Batman. Like he's only fighting the Joker, and like these guys aren't really
They're not
like
superhuman.
Yeah, exactly. And then the thing that I've found is that I probably don't like comic books.
Yeah, that was the big tell for you, wasn't
It
it?
kind of I had an epiphany, and I went,
Oh,
shit,
no.
I actually don't like. I just like he's Batman because it's a life drama. It's about the psychology of Batman.
And it's about a human.
Correct.
It's a human story.
and then it went to these aliens and all this intergalactic, which is what comic books are.
Exactly, yeah.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't actually consider the Dark Knight trilogy to be like a superhero.
No.
No, it's
not.
It's an
No, it's
Oscar-worthy film.
Yeah,
That's-
I had to drop that one in too.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll agree. It's probably robbed,
And
but
you
that's
know
all right.
what? Just quietly, if that came
Yeah,
out
he would
today,
do it.
if
Yeah,
that
let's
came
do
out
it.
today,
Let's say
in the
something about Black
present
Panther. Let's do it.
No, that's fact. You all know it. That is
Absolutely.
that would now be appreciated as an Oscar-worthy film. But
Yeah,
previously,
totally.
because it had Batman in the title or The Dark Knight and referenced comic books,
People were still watching the Oscars back then. I think that's the other.
yeah,
They're trying
I
to get
think
people to watch.
People still had the foul taste of like George Clooney's film
Yeah.
in their mind. So it had
well,
a
the
lot
comic book film had been typecast.
Yes, it had. That's the correct statement there, Dane.
He sort of paused. He was like, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I
Are we
mean,
happy?
no, well, you
You're like,
just-
wait, you agree with me?
I was
Yeah.
surprised. Yeah, exactly.
I know there wasn't much rebut on that. All right, so in terms of, let's not worry about box office. It made almost $700 million, which was a lot, but also kind of failed expectations for
Well-
Warner Bros.
So I believe Man of Steel was a sort of trial to see if they should start up an
Yep.
extended universe.
They missed the cue.
But the idea was to put it out there, see how it performed, and then if they could create a universe off the back
Off
of
of
that.
it.
So there was a couple of Easter eggs in there.
So
with-
do you know, based on that, you seem knowledgeable on it, do you know if Snyder was going into this with the plan, or was it sort of, all right, make Man of Steel? Because Man of Steel, I guess, there's at least the potential to do a Man of Steel 2 off it. Not necessarily an extended universe. Did that come after the release?
So I think the plan was make a really good Superman film because
Yeah.
there hasn't been one being done since Christopher Reeve.
Yeah.
And then we'll see how it performs, and then leave it open to
the
like
possibility.
add-ons.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
we're not. I don't believe at that point they had set out this plan. They didn't. That's essentially what Marvel had done with Iron Man.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think DC had planned that far ahead. They were like, let's put it out there,
And see what
see how
happens.
it goes, and then I think it must have done well enough.
I mean,
that
it's
they
almost
then thought-
$700 million. It's not
Yeah,
bad for a
so-
single hero
Yeah.
in the film. Yeah.
And let's see how we can now adapt it to a franchise after that.
Was there any mention of Batman or any other heroes in that?
So there's a few Easter eggs in it. with when Superman throws Zod into outer space. He hits a Wayne Enterprises satellite.
Yep.
And there's also a Wayne Enterprises, I think, truck in the battle scene at the end. But that was it.
Oh,
Yeah, you don't see Wayne Tower in that, do you? It's the start of BVS that you see the Wayne Tower. I don't think you see it in...
Well, you see a tower get destroyed, and you find out in the
out
second
then.
film it was
Yep.
actually Bruce's.
so they must have had that idea. They knew that they were going to.
Well, it was the idea of like, let's have it open to expansion.
Yeah, but it wasn't maybe in mainstream media.
No.
Yeah.
No. But mind you, there's also been nods in past Batman movies. Batman Forever,
They mentioned Metropolis.
they mentioned Metropolis, and also, was it Batman Forever or Batman and Robin where Batman says this is why Superman works alone?
Yes.
Yes. So he literally references the existence of Superman within that. So it's been done, and it wouldn't be out of character to then just drop it, I guess. So that's there.
It's very different to the end of Iron Man 1 with Nick Fury like coming in at the after credit scene and saying, I want to talk to you about the Avengers.
Yeah, I know.
That's-
That one, that was fully committed.
Yeah, that
There was
was,
no
we have a
turning back.
plan. This is chapter 1, whereas Man of Steel was, it was a completely different
Can
strategy.
someone refresh my memory on how it ends?
Man of Steel.
Man of
ends.
Steel.
Yeah.
Pretty much how BVS begins, which is so General Zod and Superman have the fight within Metropolis.
Yep.
And then he kills, well, that was controversial. He kills Zod, which Superman doesn't kill
Yeah.
traditionally.
Yeah.
And then from there,
It's just happily ever after.
I actually can't.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the final scenes now. Oh, no, he starts working at the Daily Planet.
Yes.
Ah,
I do
yeah,
recall
And
that.
so it was a,
Yeah, he all
it
of
was
a sudden
building.
just gets a journalist job. Good on him. Falls from the
Yeah,
sky,
well-
gets a journalist job. Good on him.
Yeah, well, he's informed from his experiences, so it's fair enough.
put that in the resume?
Yeah,
Actually, he'd been spending the last couple of years working multiple jobs, so I feel like he was
yeah,
right
that's
to-
it, Heath. You fly the flag.
Were you a reference?
Yeah, he was a reference. He was on the resume. All right, so then from there we went into BVS, Batman v Superman. This is where it all starts getting a little dicey for the DCEU. We have a 27% tomato, which is a big old fat
Really?
splash.
That low? Wow.
That low. We'll get into that, but also a 63% audience score. So the audience score itself had dropped to audience. There's a massive discrepancy between the two. Dane, do you want to justify your 27% tomatoes?
27. Well, it was dog shit. It
was dog
it was absolute dog shit.
Why was it dog shit? Go on.
So I went into that film expecting those trailers. So DC or whoever's in charge of making their trailers can create some of the very best trailers I think I've ever seen.
They can make you think you're going to see a different movie.
Absolutely. Well, that's half the issue. My anticipation and excitement for that film was so incredibly high. This was God versus man. In where we're going to battle it out, David versus Goliath, and they were going to kick the living Christ out of each other. And then just from the first scene, which is Metropolis falling down everywhere. Is it Metropolis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's Bruce Wayne goes and saves some kid. The whole just action sequence of the whole thing felt so.
Did you not like that opening scene?
It feels
Unbelievable, right?
so superficial because Snyder has such a certain way of directing, and everything looks so clean and perfect and pristine. It looks fake. It looks superficial, and then when he saves the boy, and then he looks up glaringly at Superman with this.
I'm going to kick the shit out of you, which is what you went in wanting.
Nah, it was like a really melodramatic, brooding stare into nowhere. Like it
Do
was.
you remember the durr,
Yeah.
durr, and you're like, oh my God.
That's it. That's half the problem with the sound, the music, with that poor glare. It would look like a melodrama.
But that was the point of it. Like, that's what comics are, really. They're not understated. If you read a comic book,
Yeah.
they're anything but
They're
understated.
they're artist driven.
and it was setting up, like,
that was a panel
Yeah,
right there. That
that's
was a panel
I
shot.
literally said that today.
Did you?
I was like, that would be like straight out of a comic book. That
And you-
over the shoulder, looking up, and then seeing those two little figures of Zod and Superman in the sky.
Yep.
Like, that is setting up his motive for wanting to take him down, because he's seen an entire city full of people just like him killed because an alien.
Oh,
As
God,
just-
look at it.
I'm shaking my head because you read too far into the film that's not even there because his
That's rich.
because his knowledge and your knowledge of comic books is so great.
Yeah.
But mine isn't. I'm a common man. You guys are in the minority.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I go to a film and I see this and I get this sense and it's just not there. Some of the things that he sees aren't there, but he sees them because he has a deeper, richer knowledge of the content, which
Which
is 70 years of comic books.
I do agree with that, though, because I have years and years of watching like animated films and reading comics, and there's these storylines that I've seen and just want to see done in cinema.
And it
Like-
can't translate.
No, but the thing is, I'm waiting for those same narratives to happen, which is what happened. So if you ever watched the Batman Superman animated film,
Yeah.
there is this kind of rivalry between them. It's very
Which one are you talking about?
the animated one.
The old is it Tim Sale? No, not Tim Sale. What's his name?
Bruce Timm. Yeah,
Bruce
yeah.
Timm one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Where he
that
dates
is a good
Lois
one.
Lane.
Yes,
Yeah.
great one. But you know what? The other thing we need to address is, I feel like maybe not for you, maybe a little bit, but at least Dane, I feel like I ruined this movie for him before he even went in because I told you to watch the Dark Knight Returns animated film, part 1 and part 2, which is maybe the best Batman film ever made.
Amazing.
Let's be honest. It
Different
is-
opinions.
It's pretty great. Don't you think? Did you not like
the best
it?
one.
I thought it was pretty amazing.
Well, there's no Dark Knight.
I should go around the room and just say what our favorite Batman films were.
Yeah, maybe. Go on. What's your favorite Batman
Oh,
movie?
okay, let me think about it.
What do you mean? There's not that many. I mean, there's a few.
What is yours?
Surely it has to.
Dan, what is yours?
It probably has to be the Dark Knight because it's the most comic booky as well, and it's the most Batman-y. Like it's probably the most time you see him in that whole trilogy in the Batsuit is within that film.
I've remembered mine.
What?
Mask of the Phantasm. Amazing.
Yeah, it's a good one.
That's
Best script.
animated.
Best script of them all. The
Incredible.
animation's a little bit old, but
Yeah, but I
it's-
like that. It's
yeah.
the old Bruce Timm style.
Dane, Dark Knight,
Dark
obviously.
Knight,
Yeah,
without,
cool.
without a
Glad we
shadow of a
touched on
doubt.
that. Yep. All right, so Batman v Superman, you go into, obviously Dane said that you saw trailers that just kind of set a certain expectation for you. I agree with that. I completely agree.
I never think I've been so excited for a film in my life.
I don't think I have either, which I think led more to the hurt in the disappointment that I received. But
Hold on. So you were hurt
well,
and disappointed.
no.
And that's exactly what happened because we all went to see the midnight session separately.
Yeah, we did too. That's
Separately.
right.
I know.
And we came out of there and we sent each other text, and the feeling was grim. It was morbid.
grim.
It was
No, I
very
said
unsure. It was very unsure. And I called it a spade a spade. I said that was dog shit. And you two were like, "Oh, I think I need to like sit on it."
Yeah, I
and,
needed to
like,
sleep on it.
Sleep on
And
it.
in the morning, I was like, no, it was great. It was great. I need to go watch it again with Daniel, and he'll like comfort me and tell me it was also good.
I hate to mention Kevin Smith again, but I think his description of his feelings with that movie really resonates with me because his wife apparently walked in to the lounge room and he was watching it for, he reckons it was around the 19th time he'd watched it, and it hadn't been out that long. And she's like, "Why do you keep watching this movie?" And he goes, "Because I'm convinced that one day I will love this movie."
Well, that's the other thing is that people get angry at me when I don't like a film.
Yeah.
I would love to love that film.
Everyone wanted to love it.
I didn't go to the midnight session to be bored out of my mind for 3 hours and want to get in a plane and kill Snyder.
It sort of was one of those things where, like, when I'm sitting there watching it, I was just waiting for that next little thing. Like, it's like, oh, good. And it never really turned that next page. And then in the end, when it finished, mind you, the first scene where, no, I love that. I'll defend it till the day I die. Bruce
same.
Wayne in his suit, it's the epitome of showing, it's describing to the dumbest of audiences, this is a human. This is you, because look at him. He has nothing. This is a man at his barest, running amongst rubble. He's still prepared to go through all this danger. He runs into the danger when everyone's running away. That's Batman. Batman puts himself last because he wants to get in and help everyone. And at the same time, he looks up and he sees these things. He doesn't
Literal gods.
Yeah, and at this point, he doesn't know what they are. He's just, what is this thing doing this to our world?
Because we've spent 2.5 hours in Man of Steel getting to know Clark.
Yes.
And getting to know his story and growing attached to him. But for someone like Bruce in that scene, he doesn't have that connection. He just sees this alien in the sky and thinks, I need to take him down no matter what the cost
But
is.
that was half the problem, I think, that we'd saw Man of Steel, so we knew he was a good guy. So we were just like, shut up, Batman. You're being so unreasonable.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
the film's fault and Snyder's fault for
Yep.
not being able to portray that correctly, because I'm going to go back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because in Captain America Civil War, you know both sides of the story, but you are torn between both sides. You're like, I'm not sure who I should actually fight for, because they've both got great opinions.
No, I
But
think
this-
it's different circumstances. I think what they do really well in that scene, which you for some reason don't like at the start of Batman and Superman, is that the whole thing is shot POV of Bruce Wayne. So you're not seeing anything. You've seen that fight scene from Clark's perspective in the past film, but in that film, the first 15 minutes of it when he's running through that city falling apart, you're only seeing Bruce's point of view, and you're only seeing Clark from a distance. You don't see any sort of details of his face. You just see this sort of figure flying around the air. And to me, it removes that connection, and you're now seeing it through Bruce's eyes and seeing how he would misinterpret it as somewhat evil. And the two of them kind of attacking the city with no they didn't have a care in the world about what happened, but Clark actually did.
And that's the point, because we're going to have to be, regardless, when it's Batman and Superman, they're both good guys. So we need to be taken out of the equation and put there in the middle. And the only way to do that is by what you're saying, showing it from Bruce's perspective and going, oh my God, we can see where the tension's going to come from here because it's a misunderstanding.
Because before
Again, but I love that example that you have just used.
But it's
there.
reading too far
Yeah,
into
and I
Day never saw that. It's a different
no,
film.
Well, I got it. My impression was so completely different that I
Right.
think like all the cinematic and filmography of the whole thing, every little bit different element of it didn't portray that. But I love your interpretation of that because that's what it is. You
Maybe
said
you're
it
just bad at film.
No, but I'm not. Have you not read the critic review, mate? All critics agree.
we got it right. We got it right.
But you said it before as well. I was like, he's not in his bat suit. He's just in a suit, in a vest. He's running in the opposite direction or in the direction while everyone else is running in the opposite direction. He is a man. And I love your interpretation of it that you don't see Superman's face up close. You don't see Zod. There's no close up of him. It's from Bruce's perspective. But it just doesn't resonate. It doesn't translate.
me.
And then the superficialness of the whole thing and that melodrama and that look, that brooding stare. And Henry Cavill is also guilty of it. And it's awful. And that's what ruins these films. And then also the opening sequence of sorry, I'm on a bit of a
No,
tangent.
you go.
When I can't
I'll
remember
edit it
what
all.
happens after that. There's the opening scene with the titles, the opening titles and all that. And I think Bruce is shown of how Bruce comes to be.
That was my biggest concern in the whole freaking movie, where I thought they were going to make Batman fly.
When he falls down the hole and then he gets brought up.
lifted up
What
by the
happens?
bats, but then he
the
wakes
dream
up.
sequence.
He wakes up.
Yeah.
It's a dream sequence. So he wakes up and he's in he's in a drunken state in a bed with a girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happens there. That was concerning.
And
That
then we go
moment.
to
It was
the middle of
awful.
nowhere, and there's that whole scene in the desert, which
Well, okay, this is a whole other thing. So I gave you guys a little bit of homework coming into this. Did you do your reading?
yeah, sure did.
You didn't do your reading. All right, so the whole nightmare thing. This is where let's move on now
I
to
forgot about that scene.
yeah, the nightmare scene.
Yeah, great. No, I
So-
was talking about the desert. No,
Yeah, the desert. That's a nightmare scene.
No, he's
No,
talking
you're
about the
talking about
desert when
Justice
there's the
League.
terrorists. He's talking about the desert when there's the terrorists, and I think Amy Adams
That's a
is
nightmare.
there. No.
we're talking about. No, we're still on Batman and Superman. You're thinking about Justice League.
No, when Amy Adams is there and Superman goes and saves her and he compromises
Oh,
something.
sorry. Yeah, different scenes. I'm talking about the nightmare desert scene.
Yeah, when Batman's hanging up.
Yeah.
This really
Remember?
Oh, no, that isn't Batman and Superman, isn't it? I
yeah.
thought that was Justice
And
League.
Batman
No,
goes
right.
into the back of the truck and sees and then he has the gun.
Really?
And he gets in a
Yes.
shootout, parademons.
Yes, I thought that was in Justice
Sorry,
League.
I've
Yeah,
jumped
right.
ahead. Go on. Yeah, we go to that whole scene, which is another concerning note because Superman kills again in that scene.
No, he doesn't. That's the whole thing. He's framed for it. So
Yeah.
Doesn't he
the-
fly through the wall and take out that guy? He
Yeah,
puts
but
a
he
guy
doesn't kill
through a
him.
wall. Well,
Yeah, no, he doesn't kill him.
Kill a guy.
Well,
I think.
hold on. That's a great point. Do you guys have a concern with the deaths, like Batman being a killer and potentially Superman? I mean, it's up to.
Well, I think killing Zod and Man of Steel was really important because I think it really showed how much Clark didn't want to do it.
Yeah. He cries when he does it.
tried every other
Little bit,
avenue,
little bit.
but he tried every other possibility. He tried to bargain with him.
Yeah.
That was the last thing he wanted to do.
It showed the power of Zod.
And then when
and
it
also
showed that
the
he
power of
was not
Superman.
going to stop, he would kill anyone, even if it was just that small family in the museum.
Another example of Henry Cavill and Superman just self-loathing. It's like, oh, I'm the world's strongest person
And most attractive man on the planet.
Exactly.
Oh, God.
Pour me, and I can write.
Yeah. I will agree that Superman in this universe was a little mopey. at times, but like within reason.
But he always is, to be honest.
Superman.
Yeah.
Within comics, he is. But the issue is, everyone's comparison that they compare it to is Christopher Reeve's Superman.
Yeah,
and
who
that,
was just
that
too
film
happy-go-lucky.
wasn't. Yeah, that wasn't a dark film. But I guess with that said, the whole somberness of it all and the dark tone. Do you reckon it was the right call by DC going in? You've got the MCU, Marvel Cinematic Universe, at its highest. And let's be honest, that's not until recently, that's not a very dark universe. It's very bright and uplifting.
Disney.
It's Disney.
It's Disney, yeah.
Do you think that was a real telling moment that they did that? Do you think that was sort of a bad move straight out of the gate? Because there's got to be a point of difference. I remember when I saw it, I was like, great, I love that this is going to be gritty, grounded, coming off the back of The Dark Knight, which is what I prefer. Cool, a dark universe, especially when Batman's in the friggin' thing. But do you agree?
I think it's great to have a point of difference, but I think tonally and thematically they basically followed Nolan.
Yeah.
And
Because
I
that's
think,
what was working for
well,
them.
that was what was hot.
Yeah.
And it still is. Like, there's all these gritty adaptions and remakes. Being
Yeah, like
made.
the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man.
Yeah,
True.
Which then, in the second film, went the other way and then it flopped.
Shit
so.
shit villain, but yeah.
Well, I just don't think. I'm not sure. They should have had a point of difference on the MCU and on Nolan's world.
Yeah, but they
Because
did.
What was the difference?
Well, because I think Snyder did a really good job in Man of Steel by sort of setting the limits. So it's going to be grounded in this reality and it's shot in a certain way. It's kind of just the color palette itself was very desaturated. And it's setting the limits of, okay, we can have sort of normal people go about their normal day and you can feel as if you could walk into any of those scenes and be like, this is real life. But it was setting the limits of the fact that there's aliens in this universe. So you have to come to terms with that. That's reality. And I think that was the point of difference, whereas Nolan's was pure reality. Like you could walk into
Grounded
that.
in crime.
Yeah,
like
but
crime.
it was a real honest universe where people were just people, but then what Snyder did was added in this element of like aliens and like,
religion. Heavy on,
well,
on the
Superman,
religion.
I've always said, is a great metaphor for Jesus Christ. So
Yeah.
Well, then my point is, did Nolan ruin the whole series? Did he ruin the comic book films?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I
he did
completely
too good of a
He was
job.
He was the measuring stick.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and
yeah.
it's not a fair measuring stick. It's completely different.
And
It's two different things.
Because it came so quickly, so hot off the heels of the Dark Knight trilogy, people, I think, were still expecting that groundedness, that reality. And then, again, when Superman is Superman. He's an alien. So we're going to get this intergalactic, themes. But again, still, I fell for the trap and I was like, no, it's dog shit.
Well, let's not forget. So, Dark Knight Rises, was that 2012 or 2013?
There was 12 months difference, wasn't there?
Dark Knight Rises 2012, 2013 Man of Steel. You've
Yeah.
got a year
So
gap.
they planned that.
Yeah, and that's fine for Superman, I guess, because then between there, it was 4 years before 2016 when Batman v Superman came out. So there was 4
Really?
years without a Batman, which is surprising. It didn't feel like it.
But hold on, how long was there between Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman?
A while.
3 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so 2013,
that's
2016, which that sort of leads into maybe there wasn't a plan for a DC extended universe after Man of Steel. They did it, and then they went, all right, let's go plan it. Because 3 years, that's a while. You'd think they'd be punching them out, given the way they do it now.
I think they might have even thought of doing a Man of Steel 2. And then...
I wish they had of.
Yeah.
Well,
God, I really
I,
like that.
I probably disagree. I reckon 3 years is all right. I would say normally 2 years would be the buffer between like one movie and a sequel.
I think back then, 3 years was the standard, but now Marvel's pumping them out every 6 months. So
Yep.
that's just what we expect
Well, I think
now.
do they have 3 this year? They had Captain Marvel this Thursday. They've got Avengers Endgame. Then they've got Spider-Man.
Yeah, they do. 3 this
So
year.
Sorry
in
for
like the
Spider-Man.
first 6 or 7 months.
Yeah. And back then, I don't know what they were doing in terms of the start of their universe. I don't know if they sort of pace a little bit more. Everyone forgets about the freaking Incredible Hulk. That copped it when it came
But
out.
that's why.
But that wasn't part of it.
Or was it Hulk? Whichever one. I'm pretty sure the Incredible
them
Hulk.
is.
The one with Ed Norton.
Yeah, that ties in.
Isn't there one with Eric Banner?
Oh,
Yeah,
that's really old. I was in primary
I
school
think
for
Edward
that.
Norton is about.
Edward Norton.
No, I don't think it's... No, it is. You're right. It is. But then they recast him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because he was a flog, apparently.
Yeah,
But,
apparently he was a... Yeah.
Very difficult to work with.
Yeah.
all right, so from there, let's... we're going to come back to BVS because it's not really done at all. But
I could talk about it.
I know we can talk about it all day,
long.
but we're going to go through different things at the end. But just in the purpose of getting through each of these movies, giving them all their due. Suicide Squad. Now that was sort of the first one that really felt like it was an extended universe. Batman v Superman introduced the new characters that are also going to be in this, being Batman, Wonder Woman, a little bit of Flash, a little bit of Aquaman.
It did lead. It
And
alluded
Cyborg.
to-
You saw a flash of Cyborg. Who gives a shit about Cyborg? I'm sorry. Least interesting character in the
Nah,
DC.
disagree.
Well, I haven't seen a good one yet. So until I see a good one,
Watch the old Teen Titans animated show. That was a great Cyborg.
there's a lot to watch out there, isn't there? There's a lot of content. But okay, so Suicide Squad. What were thoughts and feelings? I think I remember, but I'll let you guys say.
Well, like I was saying just before, I think what they try to do with Suicide Squad is then set another limit to this universe. So they started with Man of Steel. They then expanded that a little bit and introduced this is what a Batman looks like. There's also Wonder Woman, and we're going to allude to these other superheroes as well. But then when they tried to do a Suicide Squad was try to readjust those limits, because I think what Snyder did well was he gave you a Superman that seemed realistic and then a Batman that seemed realistic, even though he was not the same as
What we'd seen
Bales.
with Bale, yeah.
But then what they try to do with all these other characters was push these limits out and be like, okay, like you've got to really sort of suspend your idea of reality for a moment to buy into some of these.
It felt like a very different film.
Because when you start having characters like Killer Croc,
Yeah.
that's when it's like, oh, okay, it's becoming a bit more weird. I'm more likely to buy into like Themyscira and Wonder Woman than I am sort of like a mutant crocodile.
Yeah, that's just going undetected.
And it was a lot
in
of
the
characters
simulation.
all at once. So I think what they were doing well was they were doing it slowly. It was like, right, here's Superman, and now here's Batman, here's Wonder Woman, here's a taste of the others. But then all of a sudden it's like, and here's a whole bunch of villains.
Well, it felt like Suicide Squad being next was quite strategic. It was a way to inject not only a Joker, but a Harley Quinn, and then all this, like, 5-6 others that you can then flesh out to other.
It's a money-making venture.
It was
Yeah.
sort of like, all right, look, Batman v Superman was probably, Suicide Squad was probably finished by the time Batman v Superman came out, because they came out in the same year, so that would have been.
Yeah.
So I guess they wouldn't have known how that was going to be received. It was probably too late. But even then, like, yeah, it's really heavily influenced by Snyder's vision. But in terms of the tone of it all, it felt so... Like, when I think of Suicide Squad, I think of colours. A lot of colour. A lot of pinks,
got-
a lot
But
of purples.
tell you what, it's the colors. The colors only in the marketing around the film. There was no color in the actual film.
Really? I feel like that opening scene with Arkham Asylum looked lit up.
Well, you know why? It did get recut. It got changed and manipulated in in hindsight of Batman v Superman.
Yeah.
Because the feedback was it's too dark, it takes itself too seriously. So then people went anti this grim universe and this grim reality, and that's because they went too far because there was so much self-loathing. But then so Suicide Squad rather try to go the opposite way, and they try to inject a whole bunch of jokes and character and flair and color.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, because, yeah, you're right. There was so much backlash on the just sadness of BVS, which it is. I go to watch Batman v Superman now, and I'm like, it's going to be a slog to get through.
Really
Maybe
sad.
I'll put on the Dark Knight.
No, unless
will,
you watch
makes it
the extended cut of Batman Superman, then it's
Yeah, but
much
then it's
better.
also 3.5, 4
Yeah,
hours,
that's
and
a
it's
lot
like, oh
longer.
god, it
When
is
do I
a
have that
hell of a lot better movie. Don't get me wrong.
When do I have that much time to watch that much?
You
film?
don't. You have to watch it in parts.
Yeah.
Well, the tidbit is after Suicide Squad, when it got that incredible trailer, again, another incredible DC trailer that had Bohemian Rhapsody, in
Rhapsody,
it.
yeah.
And that was
That was an epic
awesome.
trailer.
That was such
Whoever
such
cuts
a
their
well.
trailers,
And people who
really?
didn't
Well,
like
that's
Super-
what happened. They got that production company in to cut the movie up. So David Ayer, the director,
Yeah.
he kind of got cut out, and then they got their grubby hands on it. That's why it felt so disconnected, because it was a trailer production company, not a director.
Yeah, I really doubt that in Ayer's original vision for the film, it had all those little skull versions of each of the characters.
that
Do you remember all the
popped up.
marketing material?
Yeah.
There was like a skull version of Harley, a skull version of
It
Joker.
profiled them all, didn't it? When they came on screen for the first
Yes.
time, it was like Harley Quinn. Like,
Yeah, and it
backstory,
gave you-
like biggest enemy, like rah rah.
And I reckon none of that would have been Ayer's original vision. But when this trailer company came in and recut it, I reckon they were like they were really trying to build up these characters that people cared about them, because a lot of them, like even comic book fans didn't know about, like Slipknot. He was in a couple of comics years and years ago. And was always like a minor. He's not someone notable at all.
Yeah.
But they put him in these films and they were building them up in the marketing to be like, these are really interesting characters. Like, you've seen how much you've loved these last films, like, and you've seen how much you liked these nobodies that Marvel's brought out. Here's us bringing in
He's a
like,
heap of nobodies.
yeah,
It's the Guardians
and you're
of the
gonna
Galaxy.
you're gonna love them all. It is, yeah.
It is Guardians of the Galaxy. All right, and then obviously Wonder Woman. Year after that. Sorry, just before we move on. So Suicide Squad, on par with BVS for its tomato score, which was 27%. Big old splat. And so Dane will justify that in just a moment. And then 60% for audience score. Audience score dropped from Batman v Superman by 3%. Dane obviously didn't like this one either.
A quick one, actually, funnily enough, I kind of appreciate this one a little bit.
Oh, yeah, you did like it a little bit.
Makes
Yeah,
no
you did.
sense because it was disconnected. There was plot holes everywhere, but because it was such a fun film,
It was a
and
lot
it
of
was
fun.
laughing.
I
I
liked
didn't
it.
smile once.
I was like, you know what? I don't care. But the fact that Batman vs Superman took itself so seriously and none of it made sense, I had an issue with it.
Yeah.
I think that's where you and
That's
I are
fine.
different, because I want that melodrama. I want to like be watching
An epic.
Batman Superman go at it and just feel like it's of biblical proportions and want to, cry my eyes out because I just love these characters so much. And then when
When
I
you
feel like
didn't get it.
Suicide Squad was just like laughing in my face, and I was like, no, take this seriously.
Yeah. It's
Like the scene when Joker turns Harley through like the electroshock therapy, like that's a really serious thing, and I wanted that to be treated with care and respect.
How good. I remember all of us theorizing during the trailers going, oh, I wonder what he's doing here, wonder what he's doing here. And that Joker looked so entertaining and so good in the trailers.
got
but
cut down
he
bad.
got cut down, and I'm not sure if he was what he would have been.
No, to be honest, I didn't like the design of the Joker. The tats.
No, I loved
didn't-
it.
Really?
Because it was
So-
different.
I guess it was a modernized take on it, but I didn't really care for it. But that scene with Harley where he turns her, I actually thought it was quite well done, because the Joker isn't. It was done in sort of at least from memory, quite a eccentric way, like which is the Joker. Like the Joker, it's not going to be this doom and gloom thing. As much as a doom and gloom situation might be that, when the Joker's involved, it's this high end sort of like.
Sporadic. He goes from either end.
Yeah,
Like, he's
and
serious,
it's
then other times he's
it's
loony.
over the top, and you just sort of like, and he romanticizes everything because he's nuts.
No, totally. But I think
that was
for
cool.
me, it was I wanted to like almost feel more sorry for Harley.
Yeah,
You want to feel
yeah,
threatened.
you didn't really.
Yeah, and just be like, oh, the poor thing doesn't realize what she's getting into.
They really should have probably had their own movie. I think that the whole Joker and Harley movie, I was for at a point because I
Suicide
thought,
Squad was just a huge,
yeah, it was
huge
a lot. There was a
mistake.
lot on the cutting room floor, I think. And then Wonder Woman. I saw this with you, Dane.
Yeah.
We felt pretty much on par with it.
Yeah. There was for me, it was probably like a 6.5.
Yeah, I'd give it a 6.5. It was all right.
I
It
walked
felt
out.
very Marvel-y.
I
Very
walked out
Marvel-y.
thinking, yeah, I'm satisfied, and then a few weeks later, I was like, no, I know it. That was awful. And I was pulling a Daniel and wanting to
Wanting
see
to
something
love
that
it.
wasn't there.
Yeah. Look, I'm more than guilty of that, but I just felt that this one was this was where
Safe.
you really felt the pivot. You
Yeah.
felt them for the first time go, no, you want color and hope and all that, which
Yeah.
is great. Here you go. Here's Wonder Woman. Look, that's happy. Very happy.
It was a ragtag bunch of like misfits
Yep.
stumble their way through, I think it was World War I or World War II, to save humanity.
Yep.
And then like love is what saved
The
everyone in the
ragtag,
end.
you're so right about. That was the
Very
part I hated about
ragtag,
it
wasn't
the
it?
most.
They're all misfits.
And that
it's like together we can do it.
and like Chris
Yeah.
Pine's like assistant,
Yeah.
the like bumbling woman. It was like, this is just so bad
Yeah.
and so unnecessary.
I don't know how many listeners you got here, Oaks, but this might
Not many.
This might know,
Don't offend him. I can't lose it.
this might offend a few, but given that it was the first female lead in a comic book
No,
film,
you're right. Yeah.
and given the time that we live in, and I'm all for that. I am all about equality.
That's it, mate.
and-
Pad.
No, but I am. In all
No,
seriousness,
absolutely, I
I
agree.
was so excited for this film. And again, another fantastic trailer, really show the power of a female. But if you really analyze this film, she's a doofus.
Yeah.
Because she's from another time, like universe. When she comes into reality, she's like a misfit.
Sounded very James Cameron over there. It's interesting. No, you're right. I agree. I think it was given better critical praise due to what it represented on
100%.
Yeah, and that's
But I-
fine. And it wasn't a bad movie by any stretch. It just wasn't as good as what everyone thought it was and
I think
wanted
it was
to be.
a necessary film for like kids because
Yeah.
we're all in our 20s here, but there are kids out there that watch these films.
Yeah, exactly. And they're
This isn't kid stuff.
But I think having a film come out like that with a female lead is really important for those young girls.
I think so.
And
That
I-
really I
and-
liked a lot.
Yeah, and I liked it for that reason that, I would have, if I was a young girl, I would have liked to have seen that because you would get sick of just the boys being the hot shots.
It's the Black Panther effect, isn't it? It's the same thing, and it's great that that's now out there.
You're
But
playing the race card over there?
I'm not playing crap. All right, don't come on
No,
my
I'm-
podcast and accuse me of shit that I'm not doing.
White privileged males have no idea how to approach this topic.
Nah.
Yeah.
So
Should we be
with
talking
that
about
said,
this?
we're going to move on. No, but with 93% tomato score, fresh as hell.
Is that what it got?
Yeah.
That's
Are you
that's
having a laugh?
ridiculous.
That's-
93. I would love to see some previous
undeserving.
Oscar winners out there that got around probably maybe even lower than that, just to compare the quality of film.
What did
And
it get
88% audience. In terms of finance,
Nah. And yeah, at the box office.
821 million.
Okay, so a little bit lower than
Jesus.
Batman vs Superman.
Yes, Batman vs Superman, 873
But Batman
million.
vs Superman was considered a flop, wasn't it?
Given that there was three heroes in it, yeah, they wanted that to be $1 billion film.
Yeah, they wanted it to
It
break
should.
$1 billion, and it was just shy of $1 billion.
It had literally DC's biggest three heroes in it, and it didn't crack $1 billion.
That
And
was
that
the
was
golden number, wasn't it? A bill.
yes, and it still is. Which leads us perfectly into Justice League, talking about things that sort of didn't go according to plan. Justice League scored 40% tomato score, which is a splat and a half, and then a 73% audience score. This is very decisive. Decisive? Is that
Divisive.
Divisive, thank you. This one, between what people thought when they watched it and what the critics said about it. I personally want to just throw this in off the top. I think by this point in the DCEU, critics had made up their mind on what they were seeing, and
Absolutely.
they were going in wanting to hate it. And I think this is a more fun movie than what BVS is, at least, therefore more entertaining. In terms of, you could put it on and rewatch it whenever you want.
What is everyone's thoughts? Like, if you had to whip around, give a quick out of 10.
I loved it when I saw it. I've since rewatched it, and I'm like, there are less than desirable parts. I also think it struggled from knowing too much about what happened behind the scenes going in. Two directors having that pointed out, what the differences were before going in. You could see it, and you were a bit tainted by it.
So on that, I think that's a big thing that I didn't realize that when I saw Batman Superman for the first time. I didn't know there was this whole mess with editing it after it had been filmed.
Well, I don't think it was that public, was it?
No, it wasn't. But when I did watch it that first time, I remember like watching it thinking, this seems really
choppy.
like jumpy. Like we're not really spending much time on many of the scenes. Like it's quite
Little trickles of what we didn't like coming out, just enough to not alert Dane completely so he can't jump on it.
but
Is that doubt I hear?
Yeah.
but then so going back to what I said before about the director's cut of that, I thought it was a much better film. It is incredibly long and therefore not really marketable to say our new film's out of the box office, but it's 3 and a bit hours long.
Yeah.
But in terms of a story, I think it fixed those issues, which is what I had with it, that it was too jumpy.
Yeah.
And so with Justice League, I knew before going in it was a dumpster fire and that
Because
too
for
many
those that
hands of
don't
metal
know,
with it.
Zack Snyder had been removed from Justice League, from directing, and replaced by Joss Whedon, who directed the first Avengers. That being so public, I was annoyed because for continuity purposes, I wanted this to at least be the vision that had been... If nothing else, you'd watched Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, knowing there's a plan. You could see that they were building to something because
This
there's
was
so
the
many
end of
unanswered
that
questions.
trilogy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like Snyder's blamed for this a lot. Yes, all right, it probably has to stop with him. Whether or not we like it or not, he's going to go down as being to blame, regardless of what his fanboys want.
I think had you let him do what he wanted, it would have been fine.
Well, maybe. Is there one thing, though, about Snyder's vision that really annoyed you, that you wish he hadn't done?
I don't think you can talk to me about it. Because
You'll be here for an hour by yourself.
Every step of the way, I think he
Yeah.
butchered the whole thing.
My thing was, as much as Ben Affleck is
Oh,
my
I've got mine.
favorite
So-
casting. Ben Affleck's my favorite Batman in terms of visually. That shut up. That scene in Batman v Superman where he
What,
takes
the
down those
overweight bat.
when he takes down those like 8 guys in that room.
Yeah, and he
Come
gets
on,
shot in
that's
the head.
badass. That scene.
That was pretty
That
cool.
action
Yeah.
was fun. Yes, he's a big bulky Batman, but he's got to fight
I like
Superman.
a fat
yeah,
Batman.
a fat fleck. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
fat fleck. Love fat fleck.
To me, his age, it limited how long he could do it for.
Mm.
I want to see, like, I guess Henry Cavill, like a 30-something-year-old, and then have the potential to do. I'd love to see the one Batman for 7 films. Imagine, like Iron Man. Iron Man's been around forever. Granted, Iron Man can be older, given the suits and stuff.
Yeah.
But that, for me, was the thing that never quite sat right. The fact that Ben Affleck was older, it always was sort of sitting in the back of my mind, like, how long is this going to go on
But
for?
I like that because that played into the character as this really disgruntled, agitated, angry, bitter man that had seen all of this hate and violence happen to his city.
Yeah.
He had seen what's his name?
Robin
die.
killed, yeah.
Obviously, there was a bit of clue to that, and I loved that he was living in such angst and anguish
Absolutely.
that he was angry. But then I still just don't think it.
I love it. But in
didn't
terms
land.
of in terms of stretching across a cinematic
Longevity.
unit, longevity. It just I was.
But it was
you know
the
what
Batman
it was?
I wanted to see, though.
Yeah, it was 100% the Batman I wanted to see. What I hated was I knew it couldn't go long term, and I knew he was going to get older. And let's be honest, Affleck's a freaking flight
I
risk
think
anyway.
we were doing the timeline, you and I, when we used to work at Hoyt's a long time ago.
Yes.
And we were like discussing what's going to happen because I think they had these movies planned out to like 2022.
Yeah.
And we're like, Ben Affleck will almost be dead.
2 years or 3 years.
Mate, I don't know if I'm going to make
no,
it.
by
2 years.
dead he means 50, and
Yeah,
at
exactly.
that age when we were talking about this, that was pretty much dead. So yeah, that was probably my biggest thing where I wish he could have had that time again and redone it. But again, it might not have played into the story.
For me, it's his choice of casting Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor.
Great, cool. No, but is it Jesse Eisenberg or is it the fact that he made the character Alexander Luthor rather than just Lex Luthor? Like he'd complicated it.
Well, by not calling him Lex.
Yeah, but
Was his name not Lex?
It was Lex.
well, it became Lex by default. But his dad was Lex Luthor. He was
Oh.
he was Alexander Luthor Jr.
Well,
No, but
shock horror.
But is that in the comics? Because I've never seen it in the comics, and I was like, why are we overcomplicating this? Make it Lex Luthor.
there's so many
Why
different versions. There's like a Lionel Luthor, and then there's Lex Luthor. Then there was like in the comics, it's Lex Corp, not Luthor Corp. It's really confusing.
But my thing is,
But I don't
why
think
overcomplicate it with that little detail? It didn't seem necessary.
No, but the reason they did that is because he was young, and it would make no sense for someone that young to have this $1 billion corporation. So he had to have inherited it from
Yeah.
someone.
Yeah.
yeah, and
and-
then because that was part of the storyline, wasn't that his dad had come from nothing and built it from the ground up?
Yes.
and then,
And then
he
he was-
used to touch him. He didn't actually used to touch him, but I think he used to beat him or something. Or no, he came from like a German concentration
Yes.
camp.
Yeah.
because they were
Yeah, there's a whole scene about
But my point is, to the story, why did he need to be young?
No, so what I don't understand is why would you not just make Lex
Bryan
as he should
Cranston.
be? Yeah,
Oh,
Bryan
sorry.
Cranston.
It was because they're trying to reinvent it for this new generation.
But why are you trying to reinvent it? Because in the Christopher Reeve films, it was very wacky Lex. Can we just go with the normal like?
No,
Yeah.
don't you remember they were trying to go for this tech, like this, like kind of like Silicon Valley, like angry guy that had turned and become really disgruntled.
Yeah, I get
Which
the
I
angle.
like that because he was in Social Network and he was fantastic in that. Jesse Eisenberg was
Yeah.
like a little. Like,
he fits the bill.
I was
get-
excited by that casting, but then they turned him into a wacky, crazy scientist.
They turned him into the Riddler.
Oh, that's a
which
good-
was
yeah.
same as like Two-Face.
when he's
in,
on when, he,
Yeah.
yeah.
when he's on the roof, and I think there's like all this like lightning and thunder happening all around him, and he's holding Amy Adams, and he's like talking about God coming down, and he must. Yeah.
The Lex Luthor I'm used to is very composed, and he's very
Yeah.
calculated, and he's very authoritarian. This guy felt like a kid, like
Yeah.
a college student.
And that's why they called him Alexander, I guess.
Well,
But
yeah.
that's also why Lex works as Superman's adversary in the comics, because Superman has all this power and he could kill Lex easily. He could just snap his neck. But he can't do that because of all his morals. But then Lex has all this money and power and he is only human and Superman can't touch him, but he's just so evil.
Yeah.
And then with Jesse Eisenberg's version, it was just... I got what they were going for with this whole Silicon Valley angle and everything, but I just wanted a normal, mature Lex who
Powerful
could like
Lex.
who could have like a proper like intelligent conversation with Clark.
Yeah. Dane, any one thing?
Like that I was disgruntled with.
The whole thing.
Kidding.
Just the thing, just that it happened.
I think that it just happened. I
Yeah.
think they tried to force the whole thing too fast. There was too much too quickly.
Yep.
Marvel had planned this whole thing out. There was a lot of people on board, and they had a strategy. This was let's catch up, let's make money, not like let's have an artistic vision.
Yep. Okay. All right. Last thing. Favorite thing from it. I'll go again. My favorite thing is my least favorite thing. Batman. I thought Ben Affleck was great. His performance as Batman, both Bruce Wayne and Batman, to me he is the best Bruce Wayne we've seen by far.
No, it's
Have you read a comic, mate?
not. No.
Yeah, exactly.
Bale's Bruce is far better.
No
that scene in
It's
the-
different. It's totally
that scene in
different.
the Ferrari where he like crashes into that guy to try and stop him in the Dark Knight. I can't remember. What
Yeah,
exactly.
that
That's
was-
a terrible
yeah.
description.
He's in
for
a
what it
Lamborghini.
is.
Yeah.
And then also when Ra'al Ghul in the first Batman.
Could you say that again? What's his name?
Ra'al Ghul.
Well,
When I don't know how to pronounce things, I just mumble it. Or,
Yeah,
Well,
no,
they
act
incorrectly
confident, and then
pronounced
he
it in the
pulls
films.
you up.
well, anyway, when
It's
he
Raish.
comes,
It's Raish Al Ghul.
Liam Neeson, when he comes to and he realizes who he is or who's behind the whole thing, and then he just starts swearing and acting drunk, and then kicks it, make sure everyone leaves his
We
house.
notice he's talking about the Dark Knight trilogy.
Weave that in. My favorite part about DCEU
What was your favorite part of it?
Nolan's
The Dark Knight
trilogy.
trilogy.
I don't even know how I did that. That's a talent.
Most favorite part. Was there one? Was there one thing you looked at? Maybe the first trailer.
It was actually the trailers.
Yeah.
Those trailers when Superman rips off the roof of the Batmobile and
Yeah.
Ben Affleck's Batman stands
Steps
up
up.
and they go eye to eye like they were two boxers going to shed blood in the ring. That had my dick hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think if they executed the way that you guys kind of had the impression that you had, that it was more man versus alien, I would have loved it.
Yeah.
Are you saying I should just be creative director at DC? Because I agree.
I could fit it in between podcast weeks, but Heath, one thing.
For me, I think it's not one thing. It's kind of it was the world building that they did through all the films. So the world building with Krypton, the world building in Man of Steel, and like establishing what Metropolis is like, and then carried on to like Batman vs Superman. But it felt like what I have seen in the comic books. It's what I've seen in the Justice League animated film, and it was just things like seeing Clark work inside the Daily Planet, and it was seeing.
Was it that your dreams came to life?
It was. It was
Yeah.
that I was a little boy in the cinema, just like seeing everything I'd ever wanted to see.
That was me with Justice League.
It was
I was just
cartoons
excited to.
coming-
Yeah.
It was
to
because
life. Yeah.
because I think the best. So I love the comic books, obviously, but I think the best translation of those I've ever seen is the Bruce Timm Justice League series and Batman the animated series, Superman the animated series. It's the same thing. You get this kind of breadth of world building in those because you can do that because it's animated.
Yeah.
And then to see that translated in cinema, it was like seeing the same episodes but on a big silver screen, and I loved that so
Yeah.
much.
All right. Well, how do we feel that we've gone here? Do we feel that we've really covered, at least in our
like
opinion?
I said, I could keep talking all night.
I
long.
know, but in the interest of making this listenable, I think it's probably better we
Who
stop while
needs-
we're
Who
ahead.
cares about the fans? All right, it's what I want. This is why I should work for DC. It doesn't
Yep.
matter if it's marketable, as long as I feel
I tell
satisfied.
you what,
That's all
this
that
bloke's
matters.
chirped up near the end. A bit of confidence isn't there. It was a bit quiet the first half.
Well, I think we all expected a little more aggression, especially from Dane. I was expecting far more. You put a mic on him and it tames him a little bit.
I think I've mellowed out.
Okay, it's
and
been a bit
I
removed.
told you because I reflected on everything and I realised that I'm not actually a comic book fan.
Okay.
I'm a Christopher Nolan fan.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's
It's
definitely
true. It's an accurate statement.
But that's why I'm looking forward to, this is a little off topic, the Joker.
Yeah, okay. Well, that was what I was going to say next. What do you want to see from the new DCEU now? What you've sort of touched on at the start, standalone films.
Yep.
I think it could get better now if they
I think they know what they're
if they
gonna do.
try if they are now forgetting this idea of weaving them together because obviously that's too complicated for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
If they just go, all right, we can just make separate films and just do those right, I think it could work.
Not for me. I didn't like Aquaman. I thought it was dog shit. So
I think the biggest thing for me is that it's the setup that Marvel has with Disney is far different to what DC have with Warner's. Warner's actually own all the IP for Batman. They own all those characters. Disney don't. So Marvel own those characters. Disney acts as the production company essentially for it.
And you think that's obviously helpful?
Well, they have creative control.
Yeah, okay, that's great.
Warner's have creative control over what Batman does. So Disney aren't able to step in and say to Kevin Feige, nah, don't like
Is
that.
it Feige or is it Feige?
I think it's Feige.
Is it? Oh, I've been saying Feige.
I thought it was Raul Ghul.
All right, I think we've covered everything you need to know about what happened to the DCEU. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much, mate.
Anytime.
Yeah, you can feel the friendship still being strained, can't you? Listening to that. It's tough. It's tough for us to be friends with the existence of the DCEU, but as I said, it's getting better. As much as Dane's struggling to come around to it, it is getting better. I think so anyway, and Heath agrees. He loved Aquaman. Loved Aquaman, and we're all very excited for Wonder Woman and all that sort of stuff. But I guess what's exciting is to think that this time next week, given that Avengers will be out, we'll be doing an episode on Avengers Endgame. So if you came into this one going, oh yeah, let's hear people crap on the DCEU, next week you can go, hey, let's hear people talk about something everyone loves. The Marvel Cinematic Universe and the end of Phase 3. This is it. They're wrapping this up. Kevin Feige said this is the conclusion of Phase 3. We're going to see some characters gone, people. So you need to tune in next week because I'm going to be sitting down with some people and we're going to be chatting all things Avengers Endgame. And essentially, I imagine it's going to be like a counselling session almost. A lot of emotion, a lot of us sort of reeling because it's going to be traumatic. I think very, very traumatic. So tune in next week for that. Until then, you can follow us on the social media channels, which is Facebook, Cheeky Leprechaun Productions, Instagram @CheekyLeprechaun, or you can find all of our stuff on the Cheeky Leprechaun website, which is cheekyleprechaunproductions.com. Probably going to look into maybe getting our own social media channels. What do we think? Maybe a Pop Culture Report Facebook page, Instagram. It's time to leave the nest. Almost. Cheeky Leprechaun being the nest. It's the production company that does all this, so again, if it's going to piss them off, we might not. But just spitballing, let us know if that's something you're interested in. Maybe you can follow it a little easier. Until then, though, thanks for listening to this episode of the Pop Culture Report, where we've chatted all things the DCEU and what the hell went wrong with it. And we'll chat to you next time on the Pop Culture Report.
This has been a Cheeky Leprechaun production.